G'day everyone. Firstly, I want to thank everyone for watching the videos. They've been getting a great reception, so thanks very much. On to this. This is just blowing my mind. This is incredible. I'm starting to think that this is all render. And I'm presenting some contrasting ideas in these videos. Ideas which are different from each other even, but I think even just by discussing these, we're getting somewhere. I'm starting to think this was all done at the same time. All of it. If you look at this, people like Brian Forster, this is from the video by Vlad that I showed you in the previous video. It's called Brian Forster New Photos of Megaliths. And Brian Forster and people like David Childress, they say that this is the Inca stuff, and this is the previous civilization. Now I'm starting to think, what if they're all the one civilization? If you look at this, it might be rubble, but they continue that precise angle. It just continues. It's as if these people had the same intention as these people. So what's going on there? And I'm starting to think, okay, what if these huge stones are all just render over other stones? I was saying before they're poured concrete. What if they're poured render? There's another possibility. There's things missing. Either that's a join or it's something else. Look, one thing that I've noticed, and other people have noticed, there are shapes. You can see shapes. Either these are shapes cut out. This was in a quarry, right? And either these are shapes cut out from a quarry, then they took this big rock from the quarry and they stuck it here, or this is render covering up other stones. So it's covering up this stone here, and here there is a recessed stone which is inset compared to the other stones, and this is just smoothing it all out. And again, what if they all had the one intention? It's all the same. It's all the same builder almost. And yes, it looks like there are different builders. For example, in that previous shot, it looks like there is a different builder here to these stones, but it's still the same structure. So what's going on? Did they think they needed more stable stones on the base? They could get away with less stable stones on top? Not sure. Now, I always provide evidence, okay? And I do have a few smoking guns coming up in this video. Just going over to this part of the video here. I'm starting to think that this was built at the same time as this. If you look at this, it's rubble, but it's polygonal. There's something going on here. This is just a different type of Inca architecture. Now, this is one of the smoking guns that all this is just render. If you look at the joints, they are so fine and so precise, you cannot cut two different stones separately and then align them like this. It can't be done. We wouldn't even bother doing this today. You would use a perfectly straight line, but as you see, this is curved. How do they do that? Even here, look, the joint goes upwards slightly out of the straight, and it does it on two different planes of rock. So this is like molded stone. This is just bizarre. This is very, very weird. Again, they can't be fitted together like that. I've handled stones myself, large stones, and no one builds like this because you can't build like this. You can't, even if you cut it perfectly, you couldn't align it. You couldn't lift it, carry it, align it as perfectly as this. Because once the stone is down, it's down. It's very hard to shift it, to move it around. Yeah, this is unbelievable. Now, the people who say the nubs are for carrying the stones, well, not here. The stones would very quickly topple over like that if you were carrying them with a chunk of wood underneath. You'd need two, and as you see, these ones just have one. There are so many unanswered questions here. Again, I think they just rendered over stones. You see, that's a small stone there, and they've just covered over it. Somehow they were able to crush quartz dust and make something that looks like granite as render. That's a possibility. It's hard to tell with some of these stones now. People like Mr. Forster, Childress, they say that the small stones are the Inca stones. This is the previous civilization, but look here, look. The small rubble is underneath and holding up this entire wall. So it was all placed by the same people. The order has been reversed here in this photo. That's weird. One of the quarry areas. Yeah, it's really weird with these quarries. They just build staircases. You know, each time they remove a stone, it becomes a step or something. They're doing something weird there. And okay, smoking gun is coming up. Again, now this is another mystery. They've also carved downwards when they removed stones from quarries. So, you know, I'm not sure whether it's poured or quarried or what's going on. And I would say that the recessed areas are they're just inset stones underneath this render. I mean, look at this. This is, again, this is weird. I'd say these nooks and crannies like this, that's just another stone there. And what they would do, they would just render over it with this pink render, just like the Menkaura pyramid in Egypt, and they would cover over this whole area. They would just smooth it out. Not quite sure what's going on here. This is a bit bizarre. And this is the smoking gun. This is what I've been waiting to show you. Come back here, you. Look at this. This is unbelievable. Do you see this here? That was a huge stone, and the casing has come off. I'm saying these are casing stones. And the casing has just lifted off. And it wasn't plunked in like this. And if you don't believe me, just look closely, look here. You see, this is the same flat surface as this, the same color. The flat surface has remained, and it's just fallen away. It hasn't stuck, it hasn't adhered to this. And this could be multiple stones stuck together, glued together. It looks like a bit of concrete or something. It even looks like cement. And the casing stone has been removed. It's as if these really are casing stones. And if you look over here, you see a different type of architecture, Inca architecture, and these little stones. People have been wondering what these little stones are. And if you were just rendering over a large quantity of stones, you would occasionally come across a little stone that gets in the way. So you would say make a block here out of that, and then you'd make another block there, and then you'd make a smaller rendered block out of that, for instance, and that could explain what is going on here. But I think this photo is just extraordinary. This is proof that these can be casing stones. Okay, and I don't want you to just believe me as usual. I want you to work things out and, you know, have a think, as I'm sure you are doing. Again, this is polygonal like rubble. This is just, I don't know, this is strange. And there's just more and more and more of this. They built like this everywhere. Again, we're going to look at a street in, I believe it's in Cuzco. Again, it's another type of Inca architecture. It's a sort of square render, or it's something, it's cut stone. Again, it's placed very precisely. Now, on Wikipedia, there is some information about what is going on. Inca architecture, and I'm just going to read this. Another building method was so-called pillow-faced architecture. Pillow-faced building was achieved by using fired adobe bricks. The Incas would then sand large, finely shaped stones, and then they would fit the bricks and stones together in jigsaw-like patterns. Pillow-faced architecture was typically used for temples and royal palaces like Machu Picchu. They say pillow-faced because the backs of these stones are often not perfectly precise like this. However, I have read that there are exceptions. The base stones are often like this all the way through. They're precise all the way. I haven't been to these sites, I don't know. And stones like this, with many angles, people really go on about these particular stones. These could simply have been rendered over rubble. So there's different shapes of rubble, and the reason you need these things is to hide the imperfection of the rubble. So that's a stone, that's a couple stones, that's another stone there, and that's why these lines are going all over the place, and that's why they don't really care how many lines they put in a stone. It's not that this particular stone is any more of a masterpiece than this particular stone, or that's what they'll say. It's more like this stone is rendered over more stones in the background. Thanks.